Welcome back, Year 6. It's our Wednesday lesson. We are looking at another African tale today, and the book we're looking at is called Fire on the Mountain by Jane Kurtz. This is part 2 of your lesson today, so if you haven't yet completed task 1, please do that now. Pause the video and then you can come back and listen to the story once you're done. Right, so this is another African tale. This is the last one that we're looking at. This book is full of lovely illustrations, which I'll show you as we read the story. Let's begin. In the high and beautiful mountains of Ethiopia, there once lived a dreamer named Alemayehu. Day after day, he wandered over the mountains with his uncle's sheep. While the sheep grazed, he would find a rock somewhere out of the wind where he could play his shepherd's flute and watch the birds and dream of flying. Someday, he would say aloud to the sheep, I will have a bag of money and I will visit the faraway city of Gondar with its fine stone castles. But his real life was hard. Every day climbing over the high mountain rocks in the high mountain wind and guiding the sheep home every night. And it became harder yet after both his parents died in one grim year when disease had swept through the village. Alemayehu then packed a small bag with some food, an extra shirt and a fine shepherd's flute and set off to find his sister, who was a cook in a rich man's house. He walked by the waterfalls and watched the baboons leap in the trees. He played his flute and dreamed his dreams and watched the abyss, its black head turn to listen to Alemayehu as he passed. The abyss is this bird here. You can see Alemayehu here playing his flute as he's walking past. For days he travelled ribbons of mountain paths until the road became broad and smooth, and he knew he must be near the house of the rich man. While he was still a long way down the road, his sister ran out to meet him, kissed him on both cheeks, and wept with him over the news that he brought. Stay with me, little brother, she said, and perhaps you can earn a few coins and watch some of the rich man's cows. So now look, you will know the relationship between these two. They are siblings, sister, brother, and judging by the height difference, we could probably infer that she is older than him. So Alemayehu became a watcher of cows. While he was watching the cows, he also watched the rich man, who rode by every day on his mule. Behind the mule walked a man carrying the rich man's umbrella, and behind him walked 7 servants with baskets of food on their heads, and behind them walked a young boy with a fly swish. Every morning this procession went by, and every night the procession came back. But Alemayehu never heard the rich man speak until one day when he came home in a fury. So look, we've got the procession here. You've got the rich man on his mule. Mule is another word for donkey. You've got the one with the umbrella. You've got the servants carrying the food. And then you've got here this man with a fly swish, which does what it says on the tin. It swishes the flies away because Africa is a hot country. That day, Alemayehu heard him shouting a long way off, I am the master of my own household. The man was shouting, I will not be insulted in the village. When Alemayehu brought the cows home that night, the man was still shouting that someone in the village had insulted him. Come, Alemayehu's sister whispered, help chop the onions. Master is in a foul temper and wants to eat immediately. Oh, am I not as strong and brave as a lion? The rich man said as the servants served him. Not one of the servants said a word. Why, once I became lost in the cold mountains at night, but I leaned against my mule until the morning, and miraculously I survived to tell the tale of it. Suddenly he looked up from his food. Tell me, he said, have you ever heard of anyone else as strong or brave as me? All the servants but Alumeu bowed their heads and went about their work. But Alumeu said, "Many times when I watched my uncle's sheep, I too stayed in the cold air of the mountains throughout the night, with only a thin cloak against the cold." Rage choked at the rich man's voice. "Are you trying to make me even angrier?" "No, master," said Alumeu. "I speak the truth." The rich man looked around at his servants. They did not appear to be listening, but he knew that they were. "We'll see if you are telling the truth or lying," he said. "If you can do such thing again, I will give you 4 cows and a bag of money. But you must take nothing to keep you warm, but 1 thin shema." "Agreed," said Alumeu. "Not so fast," the rich man snorted. "Do not bite unless you are prepared to swallow. If you fail, you and your sister will be out of a job. You must leave my house and never come back." The boy bowed his head. "Agreed," he whispered. That evening, Alumeu's sister kissed him, and Alumeu set out with only a shema wrapped around him and the flute in his hand. The rich man watched him go. "He will come crawling back in the middle of the night," the rich man said, "or he will be stubborn and die of the cold on top of the cold mountains." So if you weren't sure from task 1, okay, a shema is, you can see it here, okay, it's like a type of clothing, okay. Oh, he looks a bit chilly, doesn't he? Looks a bit cold. High in the mountains, the wind danced and screamed through the rocks. At first, Alumeu played his flute, but the wind sang louder than the flute's song. Night descended. The hyenas howled in darkness. Alumeu shivered and wrapped his shema around his shoulders, but the wind bit his face and made him squint his eyes. The wind bit his feet, and he could not tuck them far enough under his shema to make them warm. The wind bit at his hands where they clutched the cloak. He began to shiver so hard he could barely think. Even his dreams were disappearing in the cold. Okay, you can see here, picture of a hyena. All night long, the rich man ate and drank and talked of how strong he was and how brave. All night long, he listened for the sound of Alumeu crawling back into the palace, but he heard nothing. There was nothing to hear but the sound of his own boasting. Then, as the morning light cracked the sky, he heard a shout. He rushed out of the house with the servants close behind. There, in the morning fog, was Alumeu's sister, pointing. And there, emerging through the fog, was Alumeu. "It was difficult, but I did as I said I would," the boy said. The rich man shook his head. "What? Impossible!" "The night was bitter," Alumeu said. "When all the sky was dark, I thought I would die. Then far, far off, I saw the red glow in the distance. It was the shepherd's fire on another mountain. I kept my eyes on the red glow, and I dreamed of being warm. And that is how I had the strength to survive." The rich man shouted. He puffed his chest like a huge drum. "You lose the cows and the bag of money. You and your sister can start packing your belongings." "Why?" the servants protested. "Looking at a fire on the mountain is as sane as building one," gloated the rich man. "I knew the boy could not make it through the night with only a thin cloak to protect him." He clapped his hands. "Prepare a great feast," he told the servants. Then he turned to Alumeu. "You may stay to celebrate my victory, but by tomorrow morning you and your sister must be gone." Alumeu bowed his head and went to his sister's room to get warm, but the other servants whispered behind their master's back. All that day, the whispers ran like water through the rich man's house. As for Alumeu and his sister, they stayed in the room with their heads close together, talking. That night, when the rich man arrived home, he saw his servants carrying stacks of the whitest, finest injera. From the kitchen behind the house came smells of what of all kinds. The man rubbed his hands and his stomach rumbled. After he and his friends were seated at the mesab, the servant brought water so that they could wash their hands. The smell grew strong and as loud as music, but no food was yet to be brought to the basket. There's a few words in there that you might not know. This is the mesab. This is where they're sat around, and it's like wicker. It's made out of like what you'd make a basket out of. Okay, and they're all sat around, but they've not yet been served their dinner. Finally, the master waved to a nearby servant. Here, can't you see we are tired of waiting? Play us some music to make the minutes pass. The servant lifted his craw. His fingers began to move, but not once did they touch the strings. At last, Alumeu's sister arrived and bowed low. I hope you have enjoyed your fine meal, she said to the master and his guests. We prepared all of your favourite foods tonight and played your best music. But we have had no food, the man shouted. We have had no music. Ah, but you smelt the food all evening and you heard your favourite music in your mind. Is that not enough for you? Enough? The man howled with rage. What kind of person thinks that the smell of food can fill a man's stomach? Alumeu's sister smiled. Well, the same kind of person who believes that looking at a fire can keep a boy warm. All the servants and the master's guests as well began to laugh behind their hands. So you can just see them here laughing. Maybe I can turn that up. There you go. Okay. I hope you've just caught on to what's been happening, because she's just told him the same thing as what he told Alumeu. The rich man darkened with anger, but the next morning, without a word, he got the bag of money and the cows and gave them to Alumeu. So look here he is giving the money to Alumeu. Okay, so he joked, if we just turn back here, his sister said to the king, you said to my brother that you can't survive just by looking at the fire. And she's just taught him a lesson. Okay, she said that they'd prepared the food. She said that they'd done the music. They haven't done it. So he survived without it. So therefore proving Alumeu's point about being on the mountain. From that day on, Alumeu tended to his own cows, and they eventually became a great herd. Then Alumeu, too, rode his mule out every morning. His servants walked behind in great procession, laughing and talking with baskets of food on their head. When they reached the village each day, Alumeu would spread the food for everyone to share. His sister lived in his house and became even wiser as she grew older, so that people came to her for advice from the neighbouring villages, from far, far away city of Gondar, and from all of Ethiopia and beyond. Okay, I'm just going to show you this author's note because this is really nice addition to the story. Let me just see if I can do this. Oops. So, as a child growing up in Ethiopia, I heard the story Fire on the Mountain a number of times. This story is in fact known in many forms on almost every continent of the world. Alumeu's sister does not appear in the version Fire on the Mountain that I heard as a child. There is, however, a strong tradition of strong women in Ethiopian stories. The most famous, of course, is the Queen of Sheba, who, according to the very old Ethiopian story, travelled across the Red Sea from Ethiopia to the land of Israel, where she dazzled King Solomon with her beauty and wisdom. So, that is the story of Alumeu and his sister, Fire on the Mountain. I hope it's been an enjoyable one for you. And you've got some questions to answer on it now. So good luck, and I will catch up with you later. Bye.